Have you ever felt like you're being pushed to your limit? Like everything around you is testing your patience, your strength, even your faith? You wake up tired, your mind already heavy. The same struggles show up again. The same temptations whisper louder than before. And deep down, a question starts to grow. Why is this happening to me? But what if I told you this isn't random? What if this moment, this pressure, this struggle, this internal battle is actually part of something bigger? Because the truth is, you're being tested for a reason. Not to break you, but to reveal who you really are becoming. See, God doesn't test you to watch you fail. He tests you because there is something inside of you that must be strengthened, refined, and prepared for what's coming next. Just like gold is placed in fire to remove impurities, your life is going through a process right now. And I know it doesn't feel good. It feels uncomfortable, feels unfair. Sometimes it even feels like silence, like God isn't there. But listen carefully. God does his deepest work in the moments you feel him the least. This test you're facing, it's not just about what's happening around you. It's about what's happening within you. Because every test carries a decision. Will you trust, or will you give in? Will you stand firm, or will you fall back into old patterns? Will you choose faith, or will you let fear take control? And today, right now, this is your moment. Because not every test comes with a warning. Sometimes it shows up in your thoughts. Sometimes it comes through temptation. Sometimes it appears as discouragement, frustration, or even doubt. That quiet voice telling you to give up. That urge to go back to what God already delivered you from. That feeling that maybe it's just easier to stop trying. That's the test. And here's what makes it dangerous. It doesn't always look like failure at first. Sometimes it looks like comfort. Sometimes it feels like relief. Sometimes it seems like just this once won't matter. But every small decision shapes your direction. And what you choose today determines where you stand tomorrow. That's why this moment matters so much. Because you're not just fighting a situation, you're fighting for your future. You're fighting for the version of yourself that God is calling you to become. And the enemy knows that. That's why the pressure feels so intense. That's why the temptation feels stronger. That's why the struggle seems heavier right before something shifts in your life. Because breakthrough is often preceded by testing. Elevation is often preceded by pressure. And purpose is often revealed through resistance. So if you've been feeling overwhelmed, if you've been feeling like it's harder than usual to stay focused, to stay disciplined, to stay faithful, it's not a coincidence. You are in a defining moment. And here's something you need to understand. Failing the test doesn't mean God has rejected you, but passing it positions you for what he has prepared. God is not waiting to punish you. He's waiting to strengthen you. But strength is built through resistance. Faith is built through uncertainty. And obedience is proven through choices, especially when it's hard. So today, don't underestimate what you're facing. This is not just another day. This is not just another struggle. This is a moment that carries weight. A moment that can either move you forward or pull you backward. And maybe no one else sees it. Maybe no one else understands the battle happening inside you. But God sees it. Every thought you're fighting. Every urge you're resisting. Every moment you choose to keep going instead of giving up. He sees it all. And he honors it. So before you make your next decision, before you respond to that feeling, before you give in to that temptation, pause, take a breath, and remember this: you are not weak for being tested. You are chosen to be strengthened. There is something greater on the other side of this moment. Something you cannot step into if you keep responding the same way. Something that requires a new level of discipline, a deeper level of faith, a stronger version of you. And that version of you is being built right now, in this very moment. So don't fail this test, not because you're afraid, but because you finally understand what's at stake. You're not just saying no to temptation, you're saying yes to your purpose. And right now, whether you realize it or not, there is a battle happening over your focus. Because the moment you start to grow, the moment you start to get closer to who God is calling you to be, distractions don't just appear, they increase. Suddenly, it becomes harder to stay consistent. harder to stay disciplined, harder to stay aligned with what you know is right. Not because you're weak, but because what's ahead of you is valuable. And anything valuable is always contested. Think about it. The strongest battles don't come when you're standing still. They come when you're moving forward. They come when you've decided to change. When you've decided to walk away from what once held you back. When you've decided to take your faith seriously. That's when resistance shows up. Not to stop you, but to see if you're ready. Because growth requires separation. You can't step into a new life while holding on to old habits. You can't walk in purpose while entertaining the same distractions. You can't expect different results while making the same choices. So this test, it's revealing something. It's exposing what still has a hold on you. It's showing you where your strength needs to grow. And sometimes, that realization is uncomfortable. Because it forces you to be honest with yourself. Honest about your patterns. Honest about your triggers. Honest about the things you keep allowing. Even when you know they're pulling you away from where you're supposed to be. But this is where transformation begins. Not in pretending everything is fine, but in recognizing what needs to change. Because God cannot elevate what you refuse to confront. Read that again in your spirit. God cannot elevate what you refuse to confront. So if something keeps showing up in your life, if a certain struggle keeps repeating, if a certain temptation keeps pulling you back, it's not there by accident. It's there because it hasn't been defeated yet. And today might be the day that changes. But only if you decide it will. Because victory doesn't come from wishing things were easier. It comes from choosing differently even when it's harder. It comes from saying no when everything inside you wants to say yes. It comes from walking away when staying would feel more comfortable. It comes from trusting God, even when your emotions are trying to convince you otherwise. And that's the part people don't always talk about. Faith isn't just about what you believe. It's about what you do when it's difficult. It's about what you choose when no one is watching. It's about how you respond when you're tired, frustrated, or overwhelmed. It's about the quiet decisions that no one applauds, but that shape everything. And right now, you're in one of those moments. A moment that feels small, but carries weight. A moment that feels ordinary, but has consequences. A moment that could easily be ignored, but shouldn't be. Because this is how lives change. Not in one big, dramatic decision, but in consistent, intentional choices made in moments exactly like this. So don't tell yourself it doesn't matter. It does. What you do today matters. What you allow today matters. What you resist today matters. Because every decision is building something. You're either building discipline or reinforcing weakness. You're either strengthening your spirit or feeding your flesh. You're either moving closer to your purpose or drifting further away. There is no neutral ground. And that might sound intense, but it's the truth. Because the life you want, the peace you're praying for, the strength you're asking God to give you, it's all connected to the choices you make in moments like this. So instead of asking, why is this so hard? Ask yourself, who am I becoming through this? Because that's the real question. This test isn't just about passing or failing, it's about identity. It's about stepping into a version of yourself that no longer folds under pressure, that no longer gives in so easily, that no longer settles for temporary comfort at the cost of long-term purpose. And that version of you is already inside you, but it has to be chosen. It has to be activated. It has to be strengthened through resistance. That's why this moment is so important, because it's giving you an opportunity to break a cycle, an opportunity to prove to yourself that you're not who you used to be, an opportunity to take a step, maybe a small one, but a real one, toward the life God has for you. And yes, it's not easy, but nothing meaningful ever is. The question is not whether the test is hard. The question is, are you willing to rise above it this time? Because you've been here before. You've faced this kind of moment before. Maybe not in the exact same way, but in a similar form. And if you're honest, there were times you gave in. Times you told yourself, just this once. Times you convinced yourself it didn't matter. Times you chose what was easy instead of what was right. But today, this is different. because now you're aware. Now you see it for what it is. Now you understand that this is not random, this is a test. And awareness changes everything. Because once you recognize the test, you have the power to respond differently. So don't ignore this moment. Don't rush past it. Don't treat it like it's insignificant, because it's not. This could be the moment where something finally shifts, where your mindset changes, where your discipline strengthens, where your faith becomes real, not just something you say, but something you live. And all it takes is one decision. One firm, intentional, unshakable decision. Not today. Not today will I give in. Not today will I go backwards. Not today will I trade my purpose for temporary relief. Today, I choose differently. Today, I stand firm. Today, I grow. Not today. Let that settle in your spirit for a moment. Because those two words, not today, carry more power than you realize. They are a boundary. They are a declaration. They are a line you draw between who you used to be and who you are becoming. And every time you say it and mean it, you weaken the grip that struggle once had over your life. But here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Saying not today once is easy. Saying it consistently, that's where transformation happens. Because the test doesn't always leave after one victory. Sometimes it comes back, again and again, in different forms, different moments, different disguises. Why? Because real strength isn't built in one decision. It's built in repetition. It's built every time you choose discipline over impulse. Every time you choose obedience over emotion. Every time you choose purpose over comfort. And that's what you're doing right now. You're building something. Maybe you don't see it yet. Maybe it doesn't feel dramatic. Maybe no one is congratulating you for it. But something is changing within you. Your mindset is shifting. Your awareness is sharpening. Your ability to resist is growing stronger. And that matters more than you think. Because eventually, what once felt impossible becomes natural. What once controlled you no longer has power over you. And what once felt like a constant battle becomes a place of victory. But you have to stay in it long enough to see that change. You have to push through the moments where it still feels hard. Because those are the moments that count the most. Anyone can stay strong when it's easy. Anyone can make the right choice when there's no pressure. But you're being shaped in the pressure. You're being refined in the resistance. You're being strengthened in the very moments where it would be easier to give up. And that's what sets you apart. That's what prepares you. That's what qualifies you for what God is about to do in your life. Because God is not just interested in where you're going. He's invested in who you're becoming on the way there. And who you're becoming is someone who doesn't fold under pressure. Someone who doesn't keep repeating the same cycles. Someone who recognizes the trap and chooses a different path. But let's be real for a moment. Sometimes the struggle isn't just external. It's internal. It's in your thoughts. It's in the way your mind tries to justify things you already know are wrong. It's in the quiet negotiations you have with yourself. Maybe it's not that serious. Maybe I can handle it this time. Maybe I'll just do it once and then stop. That's where the real battle is. Because before you ever act, you agree. You agree with a thought. You entertain an idea. You allow something to sit in your mind long enough that it starts to feel acceptable. And that's how the cycle begins. So if you want to break the cycle, you have to start there. At the thought level, you have to become aware of what you're allowing into your mind. Because not every thought deserves your attention. Not every feeling deserves your agreement. Not every urge deserves your action. And this is where spiritual strength becomes practical. Because it's not just about resisting actions, it's about renewing your mind. It's about catching the thought before it turns into a decision. It's about interrupting the pattern before it repeats. It's about choosing truth, even when your emotions are louder. And yes, that takes effort, takes intention. It takes a level of discipline that most people avoid. But that's why most people stay stuck. They fight the outcome, but ignore the origin. They try to change behavior without changing mindset. But you're not doing that anymore. You're going deeper. You're recognizing that this is not just a surface-level battle. This is spiritual. And spiritual battles require spiritual awareness. That means you don't just react, you discern. You start asking yourself, where is this thought coming from? Is this leading me closer to who I'm called to be? Or further away? Is this temporary? Or is this going to cost me something later? Because once you start thinking like that, everything changes. You stop moving on impulse. You start moving with intention. And intention is what breaks cycles. So right now, as you're listening to this, pay attention to what's been trying to pull you. Pay attention to what's been showing up repeatedly, because that's where the test is. It might not look the same for everyone. For some, it's temptation. For others, it's distraction. For others, it's doubt, fear, or even laziness. But whatever it is, it's targeting your growth. It's targeting your focus. It's targeting your ability to stay aligned with what matters most. And now that you see it, you can't unsee it. Now that you recognize it, you have a choice. You can either go back into autopilot, or you can take control. You can either keep repeating the same pattern, or you can break it starting right now, because this moment is not just another moment. It's an opportunity to respond differently, an opportunity to prove to yourself that you are no longer controlled by what once had power over you, an opportunity to step into a higher level of discipline, awareness, and faith. And yes, it's going to require something from you. It's going to require focus. It's going to require honesty. It's going to require you to be intentional, especially when it's inconvenient. But the reward is freedom. Freedom from cycles that once held you back. Freedom from patterns that kept repeating. Freedom to move forward without constantly being pulled backward. And that kind of freedom is built one decision at a time. So don't rush this process. Don't try to skip it, because what you're building right now is real. It's lasting. It's shaping a version of you that is stronger, wiser, and more grounded than ever before. And soon, you're going to look back at moments like this and realize this is where everything started to change. This is where everything begins to change. Not on the outside first, but within you. Because before God transforms your situation, He transforms your spirit. Before He removes the pressure, He builds your strength to withstand it. Before He opens new doors, He teaches you how to walk with discipline so you don't lose what He's about to give you. And that's what this moment is really about. Preparation. You're not just being tested, you're being prepared. Prepared for a level of responsibility you haven't carried before. Prepared for blessings you haven't experienced yet. Prepared for a version of your life that requires more from you than where you are right now. Because if God gave you everything you've been praying for, without preparing you, it wouldn't elevate you, it would overwhelm you. That's why this process matters. That's why this resistance is necessary. That's why you can't afford to keep responding the same way. Because what's ahead of you requires a different version of you. A more focused you, a more disciplined you, a more spiritually grounded you. And that version is not created overnight. It's built in moments like this. Moments where you have to choose even when it's hard. Moments where no one is watching, but everything is being shaped. Moments where you could easily go back. But instead, you decide to move forward. And here's something powerful you need to understand. Every time you resist what's trying to pull you down, you create space for God to lift you up. But resistance requires awareness. And awareness requires stillness. Because if you're constantly distracted, constantly moving, constantly reacting, you miss what God is trying to show you. You miss the warning signs. You miss the patterns. You miss the quiet conviction in your spirit telling you, this is not the way. That's why you need to slow down, just for a moment. Right here, right now. Take a breath. Let everything else fade into the background. Because this isn't just a video you're listening to. This is a moment of alignment. A moment where you pause long enough to reconnect with what truly matters. A moment where you stop reacting and start choosing intentionally. Because God speaks clearly, but often quietly. And if your mind is filled with noise, you won't hear Him. But when you slow down, when you become still, when you bring your focus back to Him, clarity begins to return. You start to recognize what's right and what's not. You start to feel the difference between truth and temptation. You start to see beyond the moment and understand the consequence. And that clarity is powerful because it strengthens your ability to say no, not out of fear, but out of understanding. You're no longer just reacting, you're discerning. And discernment is what protects your purpose. Because not everything that feels good is meant for you. Not everything that's easy is right. Not everything that's available should be accepted. So right now, in this moment of stillness, ask yourself, what has been pulling me away lately? What have I been allowing that I know I need to release? Where have I been compromising? Even in small ways? Be honest, not to condemn yourself, but to correct your direction. Because conviction is not there to shame you. It's there to guide you. It's there to bring you back into alignment. And that's what's happening right now. You're being realigned. Realigned with your purpose. Realigned with your values. Realigned with the path that leads to growth, not regret. And as you begin to recognize that something shifts inside of you, you stop seeing this as a struggle and you start seeing it as an opportunity. An opportunity to grow stronger. An opportunity to draw closer to God. An opportunity to prove to yourself that you are capable of more than you've been settling for. Because you are. You are stronger than your impulses. You are greater than your habits. You are not defined by your past decisions. You are being renewed right now. But renewal requires participation. God will give you the strength, but you have to choose to use it. God will give you the clarity, but you have to act on it. God will open the way, but you have to walk in it. So this is your moment. Not tomorrow, not later, right now. A moment to reset, a moment to refocus, a moment to take back control over your thoughts, your actions, and your direction. And you don't have to do it alone, because God is not distant in this process. He is present, right here, in this moment, ready to strengthen you, ready to guide you, ready to give you the power to stand when everything in you feels like giving in. But you have to turn to Him, not just in words, but in surrender, not just in routine, but in sincerity. Because real change doesn't come from surface-level faith. It comes from a heart that is fully engaged, fully honest, and fully willing to grow. If this message spoke to you, like and subscribe to stay strong in your faith. Comment "not today" if you're choosing strength, and share this with someone who needs it right now.